Hello and welcome to Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast. Today, we are going to talk about solar AI robots. I'm not sure what that means, but I think that Lishuo Pan will be able to tell us. Lishuo Pan is a grad student, 4th year, Brown University in Rhode Island. So what's happening, Lishuo?
Yes, thank you for inviting Sean, and I'm happy to share what knowledge I have at the solar energy. I also do have some questions for like the day-to-day practitioners like you who are already working in this domain and see what is a problem can be identified and can be solved by the AI.
And the way that this came together too is that you contacted me asking for some advice, and I thought it would be really interesting to just record our conversation because I want to learn about solar AI robots. Do they do breakdancing too? Can they do breakdancing? Do you know what breakdancing is?
I don't know what breakdancing is. Oh, I see.
When I was in high school, people would do this kind of dancing, and there was one thing that was called the robot. I don't know.
Yeah, now it's a lot of it's called local motion. It's a research into how we can control the robot like agilely so that they can follow very precisely the motions we want it to perform. Yeah.
And I imagine there's going to be a lot of jobs controlling robots because people were always worried that the computers were going to take away their jobs. And then there just became a whole bunch of jobs controlling computers, a bunch more jobs. So do you think that will be the case with the robot revolution and AI and all that? Is there'll be a lot of jobs for people that'll controlling robots and AI and all that stuff?
I think there definitely is pro and cons. So like the cons is probably the current established pipeline of the work may be replaced, but the pro is emerge more job positions, such as like programmers. And now like the AI makes the program much easier. So the people entry it's easier for people to enter this domain. And that basically opened up the imagination of what you can do with all those automations and coding available. Yeah. In general, that's going to be a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I think ever since they invented the wheel, people thought technology was going to take away jobs, and it just created more jobs. And we just don't know what they're going to be.
And we're going to figure out. I think, for example, last week I was going the Rhode Island Startup Week. A lot of people are interested making startups, and then now with let's say ChatGPT or any kind of those AI tools is able to turn people's idea very quickly at the prototype. You can see it. Like before, it's impossible. Like even you have very good idea, you cannot turn that, converting that into a software. Now with the help of AI, at least a pilot version or like a beta version or alpha version can be ironed out pretty fast.
Yeah, pretty cool. So what is it you're working on, and what questions do you have?
So I'm working on like multi-robot systems. Specifically, I was working on quad rotors. Then
quad rotors, like a drone airplane type of thing?
Yes. So my work is basically controlling a bunch of them. Let's say you have 30 or up to 50 drones, and you want them to fly at very close proximity, and they don't collide with each other, nor do they collide with the obstacles. Then you have only one human pilot that can control everyone. So that's the work I've been doing.
Yeah, I've seen that there's lots of applications for that too. I've seen it. It's actually kind of a while ago. I think maybe it was like Disneyland or something like that. And I've seen pictures of it. I think they were doing some pretty incredible stuff in China with like just huge swarms of robots that are like working. I mean, I should say drones that are swarming together with different colored LED lights, making like drone images in 3D. It's pretty awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. So drone show, that basically is.
Yeah, drone show. Okay.
Yeah. And the problem I do have for the solar system is what is possibly, so I'm now looking into the possible ventures or defining a ventures at the very early stage to see what is a sensor. So there are multi-layers. First layer is labors, human labors, which, for example, we look into the solar industry, we have assembly problem, we have inspection, we have cleaning. Then at the first layer is we can ask a human to do that. Then the problem with that is usually the solar panel or the solar energy, they could be built at the desert or somewhere those people don't willing to go there. So the first layer is most costly. The second layer is we can have the sensor to that. For example, we monitor the dirty level of the panel, like a soiling level of the panel, so that give us a signal when we should clean it. For example, what I read is a typical 15%, 15% of the energy loss if your solar panel is not regularly cleaned. So that's the second level. We can use a sensor. Then the third level, of course, is we can use a robot. But at the initial state, I'm thinking jumping directly into the robot could be a huge development cost. So I'm looking into the problem into the second layer, like how the sensors could be helping the solar panels. And my question specifically is, have you seen like industry is wanted a solution that can monitor the panel cleanness, like the soiling level of the panel, so that they can schedule the cleaning. For example, I detect this region of panel is dirt, then I can send a fleet of people to clean that the second day. So that can help people to monitor the health level of the entire solar farm. That is my first question. Then that leads to like how to reach to those solar farm, which might need this type of sensor detection help. Yeah.
Okay. You're talking about using the drones to do the cleaning. And then also at the same time, would it be using the same drone or a different drone with sensors?
No, the drone is more like a robot layer.
Okay.
And also, I think for the cleaning for the panel, the drone solution might not be the best because you need certain payloads to carry the waters. I have do some research into market. Current solution is more on the panel cleaning robot. So you have a Roomba-like robot. Then people have to carry it from one panel to another panel, then clean the panels.
A robotic vacuum cleaner.
Yeah, like a robot vacuum cleaner, but specially designed because you have different challenges. For example, it's slope. Slope can introduce a big challenge, so you have to change the wheels. But that being said, essentially a Roomba for the solar panel. So that's the robot level. But robot level, you have big, at least at my end, what I worried is if I build this system, let's say I spend 6 months to build this system, then they end up no buyers, then that could be huge risk for me. Yeah. So what I'm trying to gauge the interest of the potential buyer is I can have some, or like a initial product, for example, a sensors that can gauge how clean each panel is. Then each of the sensor can be very cheap, for example, $50, $60. Then you can clap into each of the panel or array of panels. Then you can read like the cleanness of that panel. So that can schedule people to clean that.
Great. Yeah. And so on the big solar projects, they will have pyranometers, and those are radiance measuring devices, and they will have some that go in the same direction as the PV array. They call it the POA, or plane of array. They can also have them going the opposite direction, 180 degrees from that, for bifacial PV to see what kind of light would be hitting the back of the PV module. They'll also have some that's facing straight down, or can have some that are facing straight down to get the albedo, exactly what's coming off the earth. And there's another one called a pyroheliometer, where it tracks and it looks for direct beam radiation. And another, it's sort of like a tube facing the sun. And then another way of doing it too is they take a pyranometer and they have like a black ball and they put it on a tracker and they make the black ball eclipse the sun so they can get all of the diffuse radiation. And so that's like the non-direct radiation is the diffuse. But the most important one for flat plate PV arrays, non-concentrating, which is what everybody's using these days, is going to be the pyranometer that's facing the same direction as the PV array. So they're already going to have that. And they also do have soiling sensors that they will sometimes put in between some of the modules. And you're usually talking about a tracking system, a single axis tracker. So you have a horizontal axis. The axis is north to south. It tracks east to west. So in the morning it's east, at noon it's flat, the afternoon it goes west. And that's the way that you'll usually be seeing it. And a lot of the soiling would be uniform, but some things that I'm thinking about for you, and you know, there's other things that people have been doing. So you were talking about robots for cleaning. I have seen robots like you were talking about, like the robotic vacuum cleaner, also known as the Roomba. I've even seen one, it's actually even quite a while ago, where they had a robot that picked up the robot between arrays and it would carry the robot from one array to the other. However, when you're doing a tracking system, maybe the Roombot isn't always going to be the best solution because you're making it steep. You could make it work at the middle of the day when it's going flat. But there's other ones too that will kind of hold on to the array and people can carry them back and forth between different arrays. At solar shows, I've seen videos of larger drones that can carry a bigger payload that are actually spraying high pressure water. And I'm not sure if that is something that people are seriously using yet, or it's just something that getting the people to stop by their booth. A lot of times you see some pretty neat things that you don't really see happening in real life, but maybe that will happen someday, especially as the drones get better with it. They even have drones that are carrying the solar module. So they'll carry the modules to the installer. And of course, they're larger drones with larger payloads. They even have quadricopters that they're working on that will carry people. And they're pretty neat too. Another reason why they're safe is they have 4 electric motors typically. And if one of them dies, they still have the other 3 to get you safely to the ground. But let's see, we're talking about looking for soiling problems. And of course, there's just the visual camera that you have that could just look for dirt. And you can have different algorithms that'll show you like, this is what dirt looks like. You could put 2 different PV modules next to each other, have one of them that you clean every day, the other one that you don't. And then you can tell how much losses you will have, one compared to the other, the clean compared to the dirty, by how it looks. It would be different for different modules too. Some of them will be more reflective and some of them will work better at different angles depending on things like the glass and the types of solar cells. And another really important sensor that I'm sure you probably already know about would be at different wavelengths of light than the visible spectrum. So there's infrared light. You can find out even a lot more than just soiling. You could find out if there's bad cells because according to thermodynamics, energy has to be accounted for. And so when you're taking energy out of a solar cell, it is actually cooler than when you're not taking energy out of a solar cell because the light is heating it up. That's where that energy goes when it's not taking that energy somewhere else. And you can see patterns. You can see things like if you're losing a third of a solar module, that would indicate that you have a broken bypass diode. And you would probably replace that module because of the broken bypass diode, or you would just be aware that you're making 1/3 of a module less in that particular place. And losing 1/3 of a module isn't going to be that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things, especially because PV modules are so much less expensive. But if there is a warranty and you have a big solar farm with 1 million modules in it, you might have thousands of modules or 1,000 modules that have a broken bypass diode, depending on how the PV modules were made and what the failure rate is for those particular bypass diodes. So those are some things that you could find out. But also if you had uneven shading, like bird droppings and things like that, you would be able to tell different heating patterns of where the soiling is. And so you could get different types of soiling information that way. I'm not sure, but it would be interesting to see what the difference in the heat patterns are between a dirty and a clean solar module. There probably is a difference, but if all of them are equally dirty, it might be more difficult to figure out what that difference is, but it would be interesting to do that.
Yeah, that was a lot of information to unpack, first of all.
Well, we just recorded it and you can listen to us on a podcast.
Oh, that's nice. And one thing I do know is I think there are some like drone applications when that comes to solar inspections.
We interrupt you for a very important announcement. Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast has been brought to you by Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast. That's right, Sean White is sponsoring his own podcast, and he wants to remind you to go check out some of his classes. You can go to SolarSEAN, that's solar, SEAN.com, and then click on the links to check out his classes. You can check out his heat spring classes, and you can also hire him to teach classes for you, like at your company, something like that. Now back to the show.
And I think when a solar is dirt, usually in a thermal sensor, it will appears to be hotter. That's one thing I do know, but you mentioned
There would also be differences too if that dirty module was wired in series with a clean module. That would be easier to find the dirty module because it would be kind of slowing down the flow through there. Or I shouldn't say slowing down, but it would be interrupting the circuit to a certain degree. Whereas if you had all the modules in the circuit equally dirty, or all the modules in the whole solar array equally dirty, I would think it would probably be a little bit more difficult to know how much of it is from the soil PV versus other factors.
Yeah, I think maybe I have another question of like when that comes to you as you operating a solar farms, what kind of like the biggest challenges you think it will be? Like it don't have to be cleaning soiling levels. What do you think is the biggest headache you have?
When operating a solar farms, probably finding smart people that know how to troubleshoot. Like you have all of the information even that you gather and interpreting that information, and also knowing how to troubleshoot things, like how to make all of the electronics and monitoring work correctly and to fix things. You have a lot of fancy equipment, and just having people that understand everything and have the skills. It's not as difficult to just get somebody to out there to put the array together, to install it, to put piles in the ground and put up the racks and all that. But the maintenance is important.
Maintenance, yep.
Yeah, and there's also a NABCEP certification called the NABCEP Commissioning and Maintenance Specialist for PV. So it's called the PVCMS, PV Commissioning and Maintenance Specialist certification. And I prepare people for that exam. And then people can get that certification and make themselves very valuable. And that's another thing too, that people are worried about. The industry's changing, and there's a lot more used PV systems that are getting older out there. So there should be a huge amount of jobs in keeping these systems going, because most of the solar is put up recently. Perhaps something like half the solar in the world might have been put up in the last couple of years. So as these systems get older, it gets more and more important. If you looked at like how much of the solar was put up in the whole world 10 years ago, it's a small fraction of what's put up since the last 10 years. So most PV by far is less than 10 years old right now.
You're seeing like the aging of the PV devices could be a huge problem in the future.
Yeah, so like the amount of jobs for doing maintenance on PV systems 10 years ago was very small compared to what it is now.
I see.
And it will be a lot larger 2 years from now, 4 years from now. Yep.
I see the problem. Since you mentioned you have been coached the PVCNS students, I'm wondering if you have the contact to those person now as well. So the reason I ask is I wanted to know when they actually do the maintenance or inspection, what exactly like the tiny detail problems they are facing and more like technical things.
Great.
And that could inspire what kind of sensors I gonna like build.
Yeah, so we do have some people listening to the podcast, and we can put your contact info in the show notes or your LinkedIn.
That will be wonderful, yeah.
Okay. And so we'll put that in the show notes so they can contact you. But the best way to find out about people that have the NABCEP certifications is to go to the NABCEP website. So that's nabcep.org. And I'm going to just look at it so I can direct you right now. So I'm entering nabcep.org, and you go right to the top of the website, and it says professional directories. And then I could go down, I go to board certified directory, and then I click I understand. And then I can look for all the different people that are board certified. And I can go click the different certification types. And I'll just kind of go over them while we're here. First, it starts off with the energy storage installation professional certification. There's actually probably things you could do with drones there. There's the PV installation professional. And that one has some of the smartest people with that certification. So besides looking for the PVCMS, since you're mostly looking at PV rather than energy storage, I would recommend also contacting the people with the PVIP certification.
PVIP.
PV installation professional. Then below that, there's the PV Associate. That's more like the level 1. And there's a lot of smart people there too. And then the next one down is PVCMS. And so if I click the PVCMS, there are many pages of people that have that certification. And so you could find all of them, and you could probably enter your zip code, and you can find people that are close to you.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice.
If you're looking for people that are doing big utility scale projects, you could also look to places like out in the desert, like in Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, California. There's a lot of people there. And then there's the PV design specialist, the PV installer specialist, PV system inspector, solar heating installer, probably not what you're looking for, some more solar heating, and then there's a PV technical sales. But you can find all that at nabcep.org.
Website.
Yep, nabcep.org. And then you could go to my website if there's a listener that wants to get one of those certifications, and you just go to SolarSEAN.com, and you can go / in any one of these certifications. So I can go / PVCMS for the PV commissioning and maintenance specialist certification, and it'll take you right there to my classes.
Okay. Maybe I can also follow up, like in terms of which website after this talk in the LinkedIn, because it's pretty hard to write everything down.
Okay, yeah. Oh, but this is all recorded. I'll give you the recording. Sure.
Okay.
And it'll be on the podcast, but I'll give it to you early.
Okay. Thank you. One thing is becoming obstacle for developing the PV related tech is yesterday I was talking to like a team, like before they have been working on the solar tech. The team was formed by MTA grad student and also a Wharton MBA, and they have been working on cleaning robots. And how this begins is like they have a pretty big contract from a Middle East company, and they start working for that company to prototyping this vehicle. But the thing is, after they develop 6 months of the vehicle, what happens is the company retract, like there is some policy issues because the company was based on China, I think, then there is some policy issue. They cannot continue the project. That's one of the things I was worried about. Like, for example, if I build such a robotic system, which typically cost, let's say 1 year, then I wanted to sell it because it definitely gonna help. Then I wanted to sell it to solar company. What I heard from them is they got a lot of obstacles because people in the solar energy is more like very hard to buy in, like why I should use your technology. As a professional, do you think this is going to be an obstacle, or like what is a way to navigate through this?
You know, if it helps people make money, they'll buy it. They'll buy it if it helps them make money. Yeah, for sure.
I see.
So you just need to show that it helps them make money. Or you could say make money or save money, same thing.
I see. And for example, I put up a deck, like I have an initial prototype thing. Either it's like a sensor detector or it's a robot. Who do you think is either company or like, I guess, a small business to contact to?
I'm assuming you're looking for large systems, like clients that have really large photovoltaic systems, or are you also interested in smaller rooftop, residential, commercial, industrial?
I'm interested in local solar farms as a beginning entry point, because I feel like it could be much harder to get the big client to get adapted to your system. So I think it might be a better idea to start with small business and maybe like a rooftop residential.
Okay. I do know some people that you maybe can work with. I just had somebody on the podcast that I interviewed at RE Plus, and his name is Rudy Saporiti, and he works for a company called IBTS, and they do a lot of maintenance and commissioning. And so I can give you his information, and you could talk to him, or you could listen to him on this podcast. He's a real nice guy.
That will be wonderful. And at least one of the pinpoint I currently see in the robot cleaning is that there are currently like the following types. One type is human carrying one cleaning robot to the panel. Then human operates that. Then the problem become like you need to have a human in the loop, and carrying this big chunky machine is huge labor. The second type is mounting on one of the solar panel, then it's like a sliding machine sliding through the solar panel. Then the problem with that is like you basically have to buy each solar panel array with one of these kind of robot. Then if you have a huge utility farm, then become a huge cost. Then the third kind is I see kind of like a door frame machine, kind of like in-cells your solar arrays within their frames. Then it will lower down a cleaning mop, and they're cleaning the hallways. Then all those machines, I see the price is pretty high. And when I was talking to the company that developed by the MIT alumni, they was using the mobile robots. So it's like a robot robots with a 6-axis mounting that mounts the sliding machine onto the robot and then carries it to the next array, then put it again. Then after cleaning, then collect it, then move to next array, then cleaning that. So I do think there is something different and novel to that. It's just like they met a huge obstacles like finding the buyers. So that caused the entire project basically cease to death. And that's why I ask all those connecting problems.
Yeah, and I have a feeling too that it's probably a good opportunity for you to be doing this at this time, because there's a lot of people that are nervous about the industry and the tax credits and all that. And I believe that we're going to all do fine in the long run, but there's going to be more time to focus on the things that we haven't had time to focus on, which includes like maintenance. Like the big companies, they're just too busy installing and all that. You might have to wait for even a little while because there's a tax credit that expires at the end of the year, but that's pretty much almost here. I think it's probably a really good time for you and others to get involved in maintenance.
Well, what do you mean by tax credit?
So there's a bill that was passed in the United States that some people call the Big Bad Bill, and it was on July 4th. And it's changing the way that they do the solar tax credit.
Oh, I see.
And it's not in favor of the solar industry. So it's going to be tough for people that are doing door-to-door solar sales because there's not enough money for them anymore. We just have to take away their money and do it ourselves.
I see.
And I'm teasing those solar salespeople, but most people in the world do solar a lot less expensively than we do it in the United States. And now we have to start doing what the rest of the world does.
I see. Yeah. I will definitely try to follow you up with like the IBTS you talk about and the website you talk about, and see if I can find people to reach out to know more about like the operation wise. Because I do want to know more like what exactly the problem when they come to day-to-day operations, so that I see which part can be optimized. And yeah, and also probably reach out to the people, because my current thinking is like before investing a lot of time developing the thing, should actually gauge the interest of what people actually need in order to build the correct thing for the correct group of people. Yeah.
Great. Okay, good. All right. I think that we've got a lot for people to think about, and everybody should go out there and get their NABCEP PV Commissioning and Maintenance Specialist certification. And I have all these practice exams that will help people pass that test, and people can get themselves a lot better in the career market with that certification. And they can also go to Brown University in Rhode Island and become a grad student like yourself. And what's your degree in that you're working on?
Degree is in computer science. Yeah.
Computer science. And you could learn about robots and solar and AI. Those sounds like really cool things all together. AI, solar robots. And so thanks for listening to Shawn White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast. To find out more, go to SolarSEAN.com. And if you want to find out more too, you can find out about Lishuo Pan, and his information is in the show notes. And any last words, Lishuo Pan?
Thank you for inviting, and yeah, that's very good. Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, let's stay in touch, and I wish you the best of luck. And I hope that you can bring down the cost of solar by 10 cents a watt. But if you could bring down the cost of solar 1/4 of a cent per watt, then you will be a hero. Thanks for using your brain to make this happen for everyone else. Thanks a lot.